Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving straight into a massive shockwave that literally just rocked the global AI industry to its core. I mean, this is something that is completely reshaping how developers, businesses, and frankly governments think about artificial intelligence. We're talking about the totally unprecedented suspension of Anthropic's Fable 5 and Mythos 5 models. And you know, this isn't just a story about one single tech company. It's a huge, complicated story about power, geopolitics, and a really harsh new reality for the technology that's basically eating the world right now.
3 days. Let that sink in for a second. 3 days. A government can literally greenlight the absolute most powerful product in its category, let it out into the wild, and then turn around and take it entirely away just 72 hours later. That staggering fact, honestly more than any insane capability benchmark, is the absolute lasting lesson of the Fable 5 suspension.
The sheer velocity of this whiplash is just absolutely stunning. So let's walk through it. Days prior to June 12th, Anthropic launches Fable 5 and Mythos 5. There's massive fanfare, everyone is super excited. Then, boom, on June 12th, the US government issues an export control directive. This officially bars access to any foreign national over a contested jailbreak. And because of how the underlying infrastructure works, Anthropic was forced into an immediate, total global suspension. It was literally 3 days from launch to a total provider-wide blackout. Crazy, right?
Which brings us to Section 1, the 3-day trust shock.
So at the epicenter of this event, we have this massive structural collision, and it's one where both sides honestly have incredibly valid points. On one hand, you have the US government, right? They have a genuine, lawful national security mandate. These frontier cyber capabilities are truly dual use, and this directive was triggered by a specific jailbreak that they viewed as a legitimate threat. But then, on the other side, you have Anthropic, and really the wider commercial market, screaming for proportionality, transparency, and just some basic commercial predictability. They've argued that the jailbreak was narrow and actually pretty common. Now, we're not here to take sides at all, because frankly, this right here is just the reality of building world-altering tech. You've got totally valid national security concerns colliding head-on with a desperate market need for predictable regulation.
But you want to know what makes this so incredibly difficult for the industry to navigate? It's the dizzying inconsistency of it all. You have different arms of the exact same government pulling in completely opposite directions on the exact same class of models. I mean, think about it. Earlier this year, a court sided with Anthropic in a dispute with the Pentagon. Intelligence agencies are reportedly out there using these very models. Yet, at the exact same time, you've got the White House resisting wider civilian access and the Commerce Department swooping in to pull the absolute hardest lever available, the total kill switch. When a government literally cannot agree with itself, outside parties just cannot build a reliable roadmap around it.
And that brings us to a quote from the source material that perfectly captures the profound realization sweeping through the tech world right now. It says this: event, quote, quietly reframes US AI from a product you own into a capability you rent at Washington's discretion. Wow. I mean, frontier AI access is no longer a given, folks. It is absolutely a conditional, revocable dependency.
All right, let's shift gears to Section 2, the AI Contagion Effect.
So what does this all mean for everyone else? Well, here is the urgent question every single developer is asking right now. Anthropic goes down, so the immediate natural instinct is to just route all demands straight over to OpenAI's GPT 5.5, which has been their flagship since April, right? People are frantically asking, hey, if I just switch my workloads over, am I safe?
Well, the short answer is no. Not at all. The logic used for this export control is completely, 100% provider agnostic. The government doesn't care if the name on the building says Anthropic, OpenAI, or Google. Their concern keys in entirely on frontier capability, national security, and foreign national access. And those factors, they apply to everyone across the board. So GPT 5.5, the highly anticipated GPT 5.6, Google's Gemini, they are all equally exposed to this exact same mechanism. Switching your provider might solve your availability issue for today, sure, but it does absolutely nothing to protect you from the underlying precedent of launch time political risk.
Moving on to Section 3, U.S. Regulatory Uncertainty.
Let's talk about the ripple effect here at home, because it really lands as massive collateral damage. In theory, right, a US person-only customer should easily survive a ban that's aimed at foreign nationals. But, you know, the real world is super messy. Because these restrictions couldn't be enforced query by query down at the infrastructure level, the control that was aimed at foreign nationals basically took down everyone in the room. Even purely American enterprises lost Fable and Mythos outright. And so now American businesses have to literally price regulatory uncertainty as a line item on their budgets. It totally rewards these large, conservative incumbents who can absorb that kind of risk, and it absolutely punishes the agile startups that bet everything on a single, brand-new frontier model.
Next up, Section 4, Europe's Sovereignty Validation.
Okay, let's look across the Atlantic. The exact moment that letter landed, essentially every European business was instantly cut off. But what's really fascinating here is the timing. Literally just days prior, on June 3rd, Europe unveiled its tech sovereignty package. This was a massive initiative built entirely on the premise that depending on foreign tech is a huge strategic vulnerability. And man, this Fable suspension validated their worst fears in real time. It's highly reminiscent of when a U.S. sanction famously cost the International Criminal Court's chief prosecutor his Microsoft email account. It absolutely proves the U.S. kill switch is real, and it is going to massively accelerate Europe's demand for sovereign and open models.
But, we have to look at the honest counterweight here. Despite these super strong legal sovereignty goals, the EU basically cannot actually decouple right now. To put it into perspective, US providers hold roughly 70% of the EU cloud market, and Europe relies on non-EU suppliers for about 80% of its key digital technology. Legal sovereignty is just not the same thing as frontier capability. So, the European outcome isn't to exit the system, it's to hedge. They have to keep using US models for sure, but they will never ever again let a load-bearing application depend entirely on one single US frontier model.
Let's keep moving. Section 5, Asia's multipolar AI world. So as this ripple effect continues across the Pacific, the reaction in Asia really splits in two. For China, this is the ultimate, massive I told you so moment. They've spent years building an independent stack with models like DeepSeek and Qwen, specifically so they'd be immune to US controls. This episode just completely validates their whole strategy of self-reliance. Meanwhile, the rest of Asia, we're talking Japan, Korea, India, and the Gulf, they're drawing the exact same lessons as Europe. They clearly see that access to US models is highly conditional. So this suspension is acting like pouring gasoline on a fire. It's a massive accelerant for a multipolar AI world, heavily pushing these regions toward domestic models, open weights, and some very serious multi-provider hedging.
And finally, Section 6, Architecting for Substitution.
So what's the big takeaway? Whether you're coding in Brussels, Bengaluru, or Boston, the universal lesson is learned. You have to change how you build. Step 1, you need to treat all frontier model access as a revocable, jurisdiction-bound dependency. Step 2, always keep a tier below fallback wired in, something like Opus 4.8 that might just fly under the regulatory radar. Step 3, diversify your providers. And Step 4, which is absolutely the most critical, architect your entire tech stack for instant substitution. I'm telling you, model abstraction layers are suddenly worth way more than any single model upgrade. You basically have to assume that the newest, most capable model is also the most politically exposed.
I want to leave you with this one final provocative thought. The kill switch is now officially part of the threat model, and that's not because we know for sure it will be pulled again, but because for 3 days in June, it actually was. So I have to ask you, if your primary AI went entirely dark tomorrow by sudden government order, would your business actually survive the next 72 hours? Really think about your tech stack, look at your redundancies, and start architecting for this crazy new AI reality. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.